What was Yukio Mishima's daily writing routine? Because Mishima had a prolific output. Over the course of 25 years, Mishima wrote 34 novels, 50 plays, 25 books of short stories, 35 books of essays, an opera, and a film. And you may think that with that amount of output that his writing just sucked. But if you've ever read The Temple of the Golden Pavilion, The Sea of Fertility Tetralogy, or some of his other novels, then you would know that Mishima was a very good writer and better than 99% of authors who are getting published by major houses today. And so today, for the first time in YouTube history, I'm going to reveal Mishima's hour-by-hour daily routine and talk about his writing routine also. Because if you guys don't already know, Right Conscious is the headquarters of everything related to Yukio Mishima here on YouTube. You will find videos in the playlist down below on his life, on his books, his life philosophy, and his writing philosophy. And so axiomatically, Mishima had a very odd relationship with time, because I want you to imagine that God gave you a watch and told you, hey, if you use your time wisely, then you can change the world. Would you take time more seriously than you do now? You probably show up late to meetings. You probably waste a bunch of time on YouTube and on other things. And you aren't having maybe the output as a writer or as a human being that you want. But in 1944, when Mishima graduated at the top of his class at the Peers School in Tokyo, which was one of the top schools, Emperor Hirohito himself awarded Mishima, for graduating at the top of his class, a pocket watch. And if you guys know about the deification of the emperor and how people in pre-war and wartime Japan viewed the emperor as this kind of godlike figure, then you would know that this was a really big deal. And this is Mishima up here right now with the pocket watch. And so Mishima viewed this award as a decree that he must utilize every minute of time well, and more so that he became an adherent to time. If you read some of his essays, he's always ranting about people not being on time and how the men of the modern world in the 1970s and 60s have fallen because they aren't punctual anymore. And if you showed up late to a dinner, Mishima would just leave. But like most things, Mishima's weird relationship to time isn't just connected to the emperor. It's also connected to familial trauma, because Mishima's father did not want him to be a writer. And as a boy, he would stay up at night and be writing. And even later in life, for a while after receiving this pocket watch and graduating from school, he took a civil servant position and would also stay up all night and write. And so he got in this routine of learning to write when he was tired and writing all night. And before we hop into his daily routine and talk a little bit more, this once again is an example of what you have to sacrifice. Do you guys think that Mishima was tired? Do you guys think that he wanted to be there every single night? We all have a million excuses. But the people who break through, the people on the bookshelves behind me, they would have written and grinded and got on my bookshelf no matter what the circumstance was, no matter if they had a kid, if they had a family, if their wife got really mad at them, if their job was hard, if they had diabetes, they would have pushed through and they would have made it happen. It's unfortunate to say, but a lot of the time there are people who are winners and who are motivated and want to go after something, and then there are the people who make excuses and blame the publishing industry and blame everything else. Mishima was not one of those individuals. And so let us now hop into Mishima's daily routine, and then this will give us insight into his writing routine also. So Mishima wakes up at 1 to 3 p.m. every single day. And after that, he prepares for the day. We don't need to go over all this, but I love this. Shaving, Gillette, even the blades. Like, that's an American thing. That's a manly thing to do back when Gillette was manly, before the toxic masculinity turn by Gillette. And so Mishima would wake up every day from 1 to 3 p.m., which is somewhat of an oddity for writers. I think the only person that I know, and comment down below if you guys know anybody else, is Charles Bukowski. He said that like any day that you wake up before noon is a terrible day. And so Mishima would eat breakfast a little after 1 p.m. alone and have a grapefruit, 2 slices of toast, black tea with milk, sometimes an egg, and 3 pills of devil health after eating, and then sit and read the newspaper. multiple newspapers. He then would smoke 3 hikaris and have 3 boxes a day, and without pipes or filters. And if you guys don't know how many cigs are in a box, and I'm sure hikari is the same, maybe if anybody knows about Japanese cig pack sizes in the 1970s, let me know. But there are 20 typically in a box. So Mishima was puffing over 50 cigs a day, which also probably helped his prolific writing. For anyone out there who's ever smoked tobacco, it creates crazy synapses in the brain, but also it makes you addicted. And this is from a 1956 article in Arts and Literature titled "In Defense of Irregularity." And so I'm assuming in this publication, they get artists all the time to fill out all these questions because and it feels like this is something that Japanese culture would care about. Like, why the hell does it ask, when does he go to the bathroom? Anyways, and if you guys want to join my Mishima book club, we are currently reading 4 books by Mishima. We've just got started this week. And so if you want to join, you will not be very far behind. And I also record all the calls and also host daily office hours where you can come and talk to me, even in the future, about the books that we have read or about anything related to Mishima literature or philosophy in general. And the 4 books we are reading on Mishima right now are Sun and Steel, Spring Snow, The Temple of the Golden Pavilion, and The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. But if you join the Right Conscious Substack, you will also get access to 16 other book clubs, a bunch of recorded book clubs, daily podcasts, office hours, cool stuff like the Blood Meridian for Writers course, 20 plus hours of the Cormac McCarthy course, 15 plus hours of the David Foster Wallace course. And you're supporting an independent content creator who is trying to kick off a literary renaissance. But if you can't afford that right now, I totally understand. And let's get back to the video. So moving forward. Writing paper from nearby stationery shop. Parker 51 ballpoint pen. I use a katasu for a desk in the winter. Speed irregular. So if anybody cares, there is the Parker 51 ballpoint pen. They still sell them today if you want to write like Mishima. And I'm assuming that he didn't use a typewriter because if he was writing at night, hiding from his father at 2 different points in his life, he probably couldn't be using a typewriter. I couldn't find any more information on that though. If you have information, let me know. For dinner, he eats out 4 or 5 times a week, 6 to 7. I eat wherever. Then in the evening, he reads some more papers. And then his reading at nighttime is irregular, most likely because he had many different engagements, parties, and also a family. But I'll finish this up and then I'll talk about his writing routine. Radio or television, he rarely watches television. He did for a month, but since then hardly, doesn't listen to the radio. He goes to sleep anywhere from 4 to 6 a.m. in pajamas. Medication unnecessary. Alone. So he sleeps separately from his wife and is not taking pharmaceuticals, which I guess is a point of joy and pride for him. And then late night time, my whole family is asleep. I eat dinner while the family is awake. If I get hungry again, I look through the fridge. And so around midnight every single night, so no matter what was happening, if Mishima was at a party or an award ceremony, around 11:40, 11:45, he would say, "Hey, I have to go." And he would be back at his house. And Mishima wrote in a dusty room with a bunch of books around him behind 2 locked doors. Hear me again, 2 locked doors. So I don't know what the hell was going on in there, but he very much valued his privacy. I can imagine that he's chain smoking if he's smoking 60 cigs a day. I'm sure a lot of those are happening in those wee hours. And he was a stickler about his routine. He hated travel, and when he did travel, he still kept the same routine. And in terms of collecting materials, he liked to collect everything like cooking before he wrote. So he would get all the materials if it was for a nonfiction essay or fictional stuff before he wrote it. He wasn't researching. He would walk into the room and then write. And this is a good point of, to think about that. A lot of people, he doesn't have any music. He doesn't have a television, doesn't have any distractions. His family's asleep. And for 5 hours, he's, hitting the stimulant and just writing, not thinking, not researching, not tinkering, probably not even revising, just blowing through stuff and maybe looking at it later. That is how you release 34 novels that are pretty damn good over the course of 25 years. That's how you release, hundreds of other pieces of writing. An interesting thing to think about is how much of his personality, how much of his persona was built for writing. He turned himself into a person who would attract a wife and marry a wife and had a vision of a wife that would leave him alone, that wouldn't, he'd be behind two locked doors. He created a persona that let him write. And this is something I talk about all the time. If your job, if your family, if the society you're in and your mindset and the room that you are writing in don't support what you are doing, then you are most likely not going to be successful over the long term. You can, like Stephen King did and others, kind of push through to get those first couple novels out. But unfortunately, in today's society, having the pipe dream of that you're going to release a novel and it's going to be successful and you're going to be able to quit your job immediately is kind of unrealistic. And so most likely, if you are a part of the literary renaissance, you're going to have to accept that you are going to have to write and release a book probably every 5 years and make sure that it's actually fire, and then market the shit out of it until you release your next book, and then release a bunch of free short stories, poems, Instagram posts, and a bunch of other stuff to make sure that your next book launch is much more successful. I don't know how many times you're going to have to do that, but eventually it's going to kick off and work if your writing is actually good. If it isn't, then it most likely won't work unless you just get lucky. It's also interesting that Mishima, I made another video where we talked about Mishima making fun of nocturnal writers. And that was, somewhat of an analogy of kind of weak people who had been industrialized after the war by the American mentality. And he viewed himself more as a solar person who, aligned more with kind of the values of pre-war Japan. But interestingly enough, if you read a lot of Mishima's work, if you read The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, or The Temple of the Golden Pavilion, or even his Sea of Fertility tetralogy, all his characters are very idealistic. They have a warped concept of beauty and are striving for an ideal that won't work. And like, those are the thoughts of night. Those are like those late night thoughts and dreams. And maybe that's why Mishima was such a successful author, that he could tap into that dreaming space at night, because he lays out very straightforward plots or stories that are, that are crazy. But there are these moments where Mishima can jump and start writing very beautifully about kind of the internal world of some of his characters. And it's breathtaking. And so thank you guys for being here. Once again, if you guys want to join my Mishima book club or go see some Mishima podcasts over on my channel, I would love to have you guys over there. But if not, I will see you guys very soon in another Mishima video.